Okay, so in this video, I'm going to give you a crash course in using Fusion 360 to design a part for your NEA coursework for the Cambridge National Engineering Design. This is just a generic crash course in designing something or taking a design and putting it into Fusion 360 so that you've got a rendered CAD model. So I'm going to breeze through quite a few things, but as you can see from my example here, I've got a part made of multiple components. I've got my components listed on the side here. We're going to do a single file construction, so we're going to do everything in one file but with multiple components so we can edit independently. And the key aspects of this I'm going to look at is molded design and design for disassembly or design for deconstruction. So you can see I've got three separate components here. Each of these is designed to be disconnected and removed from these parts. So I've got points here where they can be attached through screws or nuts and bolts via the top bits there, and the front piece is just a piece of semi-transparent or transparent acrylic, or it could be any other material. It could be a completely separate part, and the top piece is something that's recessed in and sits inside but also sits proud as well. We're going to look at fillets, we're going to look at all different things. This is just to be used as an example of how we can use some of the tools. This is not something for you to copy because your design will and should be very different to this. So this is not going to have any specific functionality, but we're going to talk about how we could put functionality in there or demonstrate and show it. So I'm going to start with a new file, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save my work. So we'll call this NEA demo, and that's saved. Now, I'm working on separate components, so I'm going to start by creating a new component. I'll call this component 1 for now because I might come up with a new name for it later on, and in that case I can double click here and I can type the name of the component I want. So I'll start with a sketch. I'm going to start on the front plane, and I'm going to do something very similar to what you saw in my example there. I'm going to get a 2-point rectangle, or I might get fancy and go for a center rectangle. And I'm going to do a height of 100 and a width of 150. And I'm going to fillet my corners. Oh, the fillet tool doesn't like it when I've got those lines there. So I have to click on them manually. 1, 2, 3, 4. But 30mm radius is a bit much for me, so I'm going to change that to 20. And it's changed all of them for me because I hadn't exited the tool yet. I'm now going to extrude that 100mm, and if I rotate my screen so you can see that, it's 100mm long. I'm now going to right click on that surface and create a new sketch from that surface, and I'm going to nice and quickly use the offset tool. So I'm going to do an offset of -2. And again, do another offset. Oh no, I don't need to do another offset. Just the offset of -2. And I'm going to finish my sketch, go to extrude, and select that new profile I've got there. This time I'm going to do -98. So I'm not going all the way through. If I jump over to the right hand view import here, you can see that I don't go all the way to the back. That gives me a 2mm thick shell all the way around. Now, we'll come on to some other bits you can have inside like you saw earlier, but the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start on my next component. So I'm going to go back to this part of the file here, select that, so I've got the entire document selected. Right now the document is only that one component, and I'm going to press new component, component 2. And now my previous component is greyed out, it's semi-transparent. I can sort of select parts of it. I can use it for reference if I need to, but I can just hide it as well. So, and that's going to be a handy feature for us later on. So I'm going to do a new sketch. I'm going to do it on the front surface like before, and I'm going to do mine over here out of the way. I'll use a 2-point rectangle this time, and again I'll do 100 and 150, and I'm using the exact same measurements, and you'll see why in a second, because what I want to do is have a scaled down version of this. So it's kept my 20mm setting from my radius earlier. I can keep that. I'm then going to do the offset, click on this, -2, and I'm going to trim away what I've got on the outside there. So using the trim tool, shortcut T, click on these lines here, and I'll have a piece the perfect size to fit into that gap that I've made here. So I'll finish that sketch, and I'm going to extrude that a thickness of 2mm. And that is going to fit in there nicely. So if I go back to my NEA demo parts, and I can select the whole document there, I can now go to my joint tool. Now in the joint tool, I can select, if I spin it around, the inside of that part there, and that's the center of that radius. Regardless of what that radius measurement is, that's the center of it. And over here, if I zoom in and I click on that surface, I'm not clicking on a node, I'm clicking on that surface, I can then select any of the nodes, and I can only select a node. So I can click on that node there, and it lines up just right. Now, oh, I haven't done that right. It's lined up wrong because it's sitting proud. What I should have done is the node on the outside here. So I'm going to deselect that first, and I've done that over in the tool options here, and I'm going to select it here. Now it's tried to flip it around so it's face to face. I can use the flip function down here, and you can see it fits in perfectly. It's nice and flush at the front. I can press OK. So I've got that part of the box. What I like to do at this stage is start applying some color profiles. I'm going to hide my joints because I don't want to see them, but I'm going to apply some color profiles mainly because on this bit here I want it to be semi-transparent. So I'm going to save my work before I do this. Then I'm going to press A on the keyboard, and I can choose some different materials. Now you can see I've already been playing around with some of the plastic ones here. So I'm going to use a gloss yellow for this body here. And then for this one, I'm going to go up into, so we've got plastics. We can have a look for translucent plastic here. So we've got some blue glossy translucent plastic. That could be a good one. If you're using the desktop version, you might have to download some of these files. They take a couple of seconds. They're not large files. If you're using the cloud version, they'll all be available to you straight away. So some glossy plastic blue there. It doesn't look too transparent, so I'm going to unassign and delete that. What I like to use in things like this is glass. And if I go for a smooth blue glass, it's a little bit more transparent, and that one will work quite nicely, I think. So that looks quite good. It's got a nice reflection on it. You can see it reflecting already, and this is without going into the render settings. So this is where Fusion 360 does stand apart from a lot of other softwares. Even just your base colors look very realistic. When we go into the render settings, they look ultra realistic, and for a software like we're using, it's fantastic. So I've got that there. I'm going to go back into component 1, but I'm going to hide component 2 just to make life easier for myself. And I'm going to draw on this back surface because I've got component 2 is sitting just inside this front lip here, but it's not sitting against anything. So I'm going to give it a lip to sit on. I'm going to right click on that surface, create sketch. I'm going to use my offset tool. I'm going to do a -2, and the minuses and pluses just determine whether you're going in or out. You can use the flip functionality, so 2, -2, or you can drag it if you want to, but I like to use round measurements myself. And I'm going to do that again, this time on the same one but with an offset of 0, so just so I've got both the inside and the outside. I'm going to finish my sketch. I'm going to go to my extrude tool. I'm going to select that profile I've just drawn, but I'm going to bring this forward. I don't want to go all the way. I want to go just 2mm from the edge. So that should be 96. No, that's -6. Let's type it properly. 96. There we go. And that should give me a nice gap, 2mm. So if I make this visible again now, you can see you can just about make it out there. But to make sure I've done it right, I'm going to go back to Demo 2. I'm going to go to my utilities and I'm going to go to section analysis, and this allows me to see a cross section. And the great thing about the section analysis or cross section tool in Fusion 360 is its adjustability. So I'm going to click on this surface here because it's on the side, and I'm going to drag it back, and I can have it anywhere I want along here, so I can use this later on to play around with some of the views if I want to. You could use this to make sure things are in alignment and more complex geometries. But if I look at the right hand plane there, I can see that these line up perfectly, exactly where they're supposed to be. And that's a good way to check our measurements. If you don't want to see that, you can just deselect it here. If you want to edit it, you can right click, edit that, and you can put it forward maybe, so you might want to be looking at a separate part later on. And if you're not using it, deselect it. So I've got that part there. But there's no way of attaching this to the lip on the inside. So again, we're going to hide that and we're going to activate component 1. I'm going to draw it on the inside bit here again. Create sketch. So I want to create some little moulded parts that we can screw into. So I'll start off with a circle. Now I'm on my center point here, and by hovering here and getting the X with the triangle, that tells me it's a center point node. And as I move across to the right slowly, you can see a dotted blue line. If I zoom in, you can see that dotted blue line starts to form. So that means I'm in line with my center, which is a handy place to be. So I'm going to come out a little way. I'm going to draw a 3mm circle. With my circle tool again, shortcut C, in the same center point, and you can see I've got that blue circle forming around the node I'm clicking onto, tells me that it's concentric. I'll click again, I'm going to go 5. I'm now going to dimension, so shortcut D, or the dimension tool, the center to the edge. And here's where I want to be careful. What I want on that really is, if we say 3, and what I'm going to do is instead of 5, I'll up this to 6, and therefore it just almost overlaps. We're going to use this as part of the feature. I'm next going to draw a line. Now what I want is a line going all the way along here. Sometimes it doesn't let you connect properly, so what you can do is, because I'm on the grid, I can draw a line from further afield over to there, and same here. I can trim off the excess, and I'm also going to draw a little line going up and a little line going down. So I'll trim the excess afterwards. I'm going to use my fillet tool, and my fillet tool will let me round off this bit here. 1mm seems fine, and then same again here. 1mm seems fine, and just rounding those parts off there. I'm going to trim away the excess I don't need, that bit there and that bit there, and I've got a nice little shape here. What I want to do is I want the same thing over on this side. So to do that, I need my line tool, I need my construction line. If I hover in the middle, again I've got the blue X with the triangle above, that means it's the center point of that line. I can go straight down from there. Again I've got the blue X with the triangle for center point node, and I've got a line in the middle there. I can now go to my mirror tool, and I can select all of these lines. So I'll start from the top, work my way around and down to the bottom, and my mirror line I'm going to select is here. I'll move over, check, has that come out nicely? Yes, it has. Now I know this is correct because I can hover over these parts and I get profiles. If you don't get profiles, especially in this bit here, you might want to consider drawing a line going straight down just to join these two parts up as solid profiles. I can finish my sketch. I can go back to surface or solid. Solid is what we're working on. And on extrusion, I can select these profiles. Make sure you select this part and this part if you're doing something like this, because only having just a circle, A, is a waste of our time from doing these parts, but B, there's nowhere for it to fully form around. And I want this, like before, coming out 96mm. And you can see how it joins in nicely with that, and it looks like a proper injection molded construction. And this is the sort of detail you want to be including if you're designing for molding or injection molding. How parts are going to be connected and attached together while being manufactured in one or two pieces, or being manufactured in as few pieces as possible. It simplifies the manufacturing process and it simplifies the design. Sometimes you may have to adjust your design or make compromises to accommodate this. That's part and parcel of the design process. Okay, so I've got that, but now I need to make that work with this bit here. Before I go any further though, I need to save my work. And now that I saved my work, I can go on to my component 2. I'm going to hide my component 1 for now. And I'm going to right click on here and create a sketch. Now I need to have my 2 circles, my 2 holes lined up. To do that, I'm going to draw my circle, and like before, I'm going to hover on the edge until I find the center point, slide along with that little dotted line appearing, click, and then 3mm in diameter. And I'll do the same thing on the right hand side. Then I'm going to dimension from the edge. Now if you remember correctly, this dimension should be 3mm. And what we can do is when we extrude these, we can look at the component below to make sure it lines up. Now looking at that, that doesn't line up. So that doesn't line up, and if I look at it, 5mm makes it line up a lot better. There we go. Yeah, so I must have got a calculation wrong. Again, I got that wrong because I didn't account for this 2mm part here that we added afterwards. So it's always worth checking your design. And again, it's another reason why I love Fusion 360, the way you can interact with components while others are still on the screen, semi-visible. It just allows you great referencing. Now I'm going to make this invisible again. We're going to finish our sketch. We're going to go to our extrude tool, select our 2 profiles and go -2. What you might be tempted to do at this point is drag all the way through. In this specific scenario, it won't make a difference because the holes are already there on the other one, which is fine. But if you're doing something different that interacted with the part below it, that might cause a problem. So I'll show you an example of that now. If I right click and I do a create sketch on here and I draw a circle here, for example, part of you would think that when I go to cut that circle, and it's going to take that profile there, but I can add that profile if I want to and cut this way, that it would just cut this bit of plastic because that's all I got selected. But actually, because they're in the same file, it's going to cut through, and I'll press OK and I'll look at the whole file. It's going to cut through everything. So if I hide that bit, you can see it's cut right through the other part because we're in the same working document. So I'm going to undo all that because I don't really want that. There we go. So we do have to be careful with that. If that is a risk, what you can do is save this into a new part, link it, and then bring it back in. So we've got that bit there done. That's looking quite good now. That's semi-transparent. That's got mounting points from there to there. If you want to, if you really want to go mad with it, you can activate this component and you can actually insert a thread on the inside. So I can click on the inside of that surface there. I can put a thread on there. I can have it modelled or unmodelled. Modelled means that it's going to create the physical geometries for it, as you can see there. Unmodelled means it's just going to show an image of a thread. We're not going to need to worry about that on our work for now. So we've got those 2 parts. Now let's look at, imagine we're going to have a part sticking out the top, because if you've got a complex 3D shape that or object you're trying to create, you can't injection mold it all from one part. So you might have to have other parts attaching to it. So let's imagine I'm putting some sort of phone stand or something like that on the top. And this is just a stand, there's no electronics hidden inside it. I'm going to right click on here and create a sketch, and I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to use the rectangle, center rectangle. I can go from my center, and this is one of the reasons why I like using the center rectangle tool. I can position everything exactly where I want it if I know where the center is. So we're going to do 60 high and 75 wide. Again, I'll use my fillet tool. We're making a nice aesthetically pleasing design. We want things to look good. So I'll just click one line and then the next one, and after I've got them all there, I'm just going to do a 5mm radius. And I'm going to finish that sketch, and in fact I've made a mistake. And if you spotted it, well done. The mistake I've made is that I'm working in the full file. What I want to be doing is working in my component, because if I was to export this component as a separate part and work on it there, what I've just done and any extrusions that I make from it won't be present. So I need to undo all of that hard work, and this is why we've got to pay attention to what we're doing. I'll save my work because I'm in a nice save position, and I'm going to activate component 1. And now I'll try that again. So right click on the surface, create sketch, center point rectangle, in the center, 60 high, 75 wide. Fillet tool, click one, click another, and repeat. Radius of 5, just a nice smooth radius, and finish the sketch. I can now go to my extrude tool, select that profile. I'm going to go -1. So it's just a little bit recessed in. Right, if I go back to my main document, again I can save here if I want to. I'm going to create a new component. So it'll be component 3. And component 3 needs to be drawn and to make up there. So I'm going to draw a plate or a base part that's going to attach into this recess I've made here. So create sketch. I'm going to hide both of those components just so I can select the right surface. By that I mean I'm drawing on the base plane and not drawing on a surface. You can use existing geometries to draw from. So I could draw up here on this surface or this surface and use that existing geometry as a reference point and draw like that. I prefer to draw independent of that just in case I want to edit that and make a mistake. So that's how I prefer to do things. I'm going to go to my rectangle tool, center rectangle, and then here I'm going 60, which I've already got, and 75. And with my fillet tool, just click all the way around like before, one after the other. Once you've got all 4 done, 5mm radius. And I'm moving the camera around for some reason, don't know why I'm doing that. And I'm going to, in here, put 2 holes in now. You can do this now, you can do it later, it doesn't matter. So I'll put the holes in now. Be a 3mm hole again. So again, the other advantage of using the center point rectangle with the central coordinate system is that I can line things up centrally, X and Y, like that. So I can dimension where these are, and we'll say 5. All these measurements are arbitrary. I'm just using nice easy numbers for this example because your design will differ greatly from what I'm doing here. Finish my sketch. I'm going to extrude that 3mm for a nice bit of thickness. And before I go any further, I'm going to add a fillet. And I'm going to add a 2mm fillet onto this. No more, because I've got 1mm that's going to be recessed inside the other design, and I can do that now. So that's sitting there randomly in the middle because that's where we drew it. That's fine, I can move it out of the way. I'm going to go to my joints, and when I go to the joints, I can actually select the center of that rectangle. And on here, I can select the center of that rectangle. And it will join up just right. And if you have a look at it, that radius ends just at that point there. So we don't need to radius the whole thing, because then we'll have a little gap down the edge there, unless that's what you're going for, in which case very nice. So we're going to go back onto working on component 3, and I'm going to put some sort of phone stand on here. So a quick easy way of doing that is if I sketch on the surface up here, I can draw a rectangle, something like that. I might go as far back as there and finish that sketch, and I'm going to extrude that up probably about 10 millimeters. There we go. Again, remember to save your work regularly in case you make a mistake. You've got then backups or rollbacks. And on this surface, I'm going to create a sketch with my line tool about halfway up here. I'm going to choose how long I want the little phone stand to be, so I'm probably going to make this about 110. And that means now, look, no matter what angle I put it at, the length doesn't change. And I can press tab to go over to the angle. And what angle do I want this at? Well, I don't really want the top of it, this bit here, any further to the right or further hanging over than the bit that I've got it attaching on. So about there. I think 75 degrees looks quite nice. I'm going to go to my offset tool, click on the offset, and I'm going to go -3, a bit of thickness, but I want it going into this block. If you're doing anything that involves hiding electronics inside something like this, and you'd have to redesign this to be bigger, have a section on the back here, incorporate that within your design. You'd also then want to have holes for the cables to go through, so you do need to consider that. I'm going to do exactly the same thing then over here from the center. I'm going to go 15, and this is just to hold the front up in alignment. I could go straight up, but I want it to come out at an angle a little bit. So the angle it's choosing is weird, so I'm not going to put an angle in right now. Instead, I'm going to have that select like that, use the dimension tool, and if I zoom in, I can click that line, and then that line, I can choose my angle here. So the angle I want is probably around about 45 degrees. I can use my offset tool again, 3 millimeters, same sort of thickness, and I can use a line tool to join it up here. And you can see how where they're glowing blue, that means that they've actually got a profile that we can select. And from here we can have a little look, and there might be some jagged points on this. So if we look here, we've got a bit of a jagged line here. If I edit this, hopefully it will edit that line as well. So if I make that 30 degrees, yeah, everything's edited with it. And that's just going to cut out that little corner bit there, which I think is going to be a much better design. I can finish that, and then I can go to extrude and select these two profiles. Oh, I've made a mistake there. Let's cancel that. I don't know what happened. I selected the wrong thing. That profile and that profile. And then I can either drag it, or if I press, yeah, I'll just drag it all the way. I can just type the distance if I want to, but that's an easy way of doing it. If it's not stopping where you want to and you are using the drag functionality, by zooming in you can go a lot more accurately on that. So I've got that feature there. That looks like it will do the job, but it's very angular. If you're going for an angular design, great. I'm not really going for an angular design on this, so I'm going to put some radiuses on, some radii. So I'll start off by going all around the outside edges, around the base, and we'll do 1 for them. Yeah, it looks alright. Okay, so we'll do a lot of 1 millimeter radiuses. I'm going to do the outside edge all the way around. I like to work in a line, making sure I've got one whole section done, and then come back for everything else. So I've got that side. I'll start on this side now, working all the way around. Remember that you need to add your lines in before you add any radius distances, otherwise you'll need to create a whole new selection set. And now I'm going to add these 2 bits in here, and these 2 bits up here. and I'll do 1 again. Press enter to finish it. And lastly, I'm going to do a radius here, a radius here, and I'm not entirely sure what I can get away with mechanically, what will allow me to do. So I can play around by pulling it, and you can see how when I go too far it stops. So it looks like about 4 or 3.5 might be my limit. If I can try 4, no, it doesn't like 4, so I can go 3.5. That works quite nicely. I've got a little bit of a curve on there. Again, it just adds to the aesthetic. It makes it a bit more rounded, a bit nicer. So I've got that bit in. I can go back to my main document now, and I can press A for aesthetics, and I can choose a polymer color. I've gone for a glossy yellow here, so I might go for a matte red on here. But first thing, I'm going to save it. Right, well that's how we can use Fusion 360 to create a basic design for a moulded construction, design for disassembly. And in the next little video, I'm going to show you how to use the render tool with this and some of the render tool functionality. Okay, good luck.